All right, finally getting Brexit done here. Finally, finally, finally. It's been a very long time, especially if you follow it on a regular basis and actually, keep up with, or at least try to keep up with all the goings on. It's been, I do it just and some interest, and I try to keep up to date, with class things and everything. And it's kind of been exhausting, to be honest, just because it's just so long and tedious, and you don't feel like it's actually going to happen. But finally, it did. And so in the UK, the 2019 election, so they've been in gridlock since 2017, and it's just not working. And Theresa May decides that it's best for her to step aside to see if someone else can maybe get the football across the goal line here. And so Theresa May resigns in May of 2019, and Boris Johnson here in the center is chosen as the new British Prime Minister. So the Brexit deadline was approaching that they had pushed back and pushed back. They pushed it back to October 31st of 2019. And Johnson could not get Parliament to approve a revised Brexit deal. It just wasn't happening. So they were going to have to punt the ball again and try to renegotiate and maybe get a better deal. And so one of the interesting powers that a prime minister in the UK has is that they can call a snap election, or an early election is another way to put it. But basically, if they feel that it would be politically advantageous to them to be able to have a revote on people's current representation, and they feel like they've got the political winds at their back, and that there's enough people that might flip a few seats in Parliament, and they can do that. It's just oddity of their system that they can just call an election all of a sudden. And so that's what he does. And so in December of 2019, they get an election together, and it ends up being a massive win for the Conservatives and a massive loss for Labour. And there's a number of factors that go into all that. A lot of it has to do with exhaustion. People are just ready to make Brexit happen. And so Johnson has that in his favor. Jeremy Corbyn is the Labour leader, and he's not providing a lot of solid leadership, and he's almost too far left in a lot of ways from where the public is at the moment. And so he's pushing a lot of leftist ideals at the time when it maybe focusing just on staying in the EU would have been a better tactic, but that was the path that he went, and so the Labour ends up losing significant, and even the SNP, the Scottish side of things, they lose out more than they would have expected as well. So in terms of the number and proportion of seats, it was the largest loss for Labour since 1935. Big loss there. The Conservatives are able to gain an 80-seat majority in Parliament, which is pretty massive. The biggest that had happened since 87, when Thatcher was at her height of power. So a big win for them in that regard. And so, and interestingly, a lot of the inroads made by the Conservatives are in Labour territory. So, as you know, with the US, there's blue areas and red areas. In the UK, it's flipped, so the Conservatives are blue and the Labour is red, which gets a little confusing. But all of, normally there's in the north of England, right below Scotland, there's a huge chunk of the country there that is heavily Labour voting. And in this case, they were able to flip a lot of those seats blue to the Conservatives, and it was always known as the Red Wall. That was what they called it in the election, and I guess well before then. And they said that the Conservatives were able to break through the Red Wall, which was the Labour strongholds. And so they're in a position now. I was going to say, it always been very working class in that area, and so think about like Detroit in the 50s through the 70s, or maybe Pennsylvania or something like that. That was very solid in its identity. They're able to break through that. So with all of this, Johnson wins what is essentially a mandate, and Labor knows that they've lost, and the anti-Brexit party has essentially lost heavily at this point. So if you're interested, this is just a couple minutes long, but it gives you a little bit of a montage kind of view of what it was like on election night. It's always neat to see the coverage that's happening, and so you can check that out there. Just a few of the results. We won't spend a ton of time on this, but here you can see the 326 needed to win. They win well more than that. Labor hasn't, they had a plus 47 and Labor had a negative 59. And so, between those two, they end up with and S&P had a plus 13. So they end up with a significant boost here. 67% voter turnout. And again, here with the Conservative and Labor, won't go into the rest of these, but there's that random Welsh party that is just there in Wales, and they're doing their own thing. But here, let me move my little thing up here. You can see the Labor. This is London, and then you have a few other spots in heavily populated areas, but the Conservatives are able to control a massive chunk of the country, and even make some inroads in Scotland there. So there's a little bit closer view of Scotland, with the Conservatives pushing into what it would normally be SNP territory. So this is a good example here. So this is a quick little cutout here of this section. And so remember, red is Labor. And so you can see those areas just shrinking back. Looks like the blue is washing over them in this case. So it breaks through here and pushes all of this section here. You lost at least, all this county here, that county there. And so it even breaks through to the ocean right there. And so all those are seats lost, and all those are new votes in Parliament for the Conservative agenda, which is going to be getting Brexit done here. And even down here you see it as well. This is compared to a 2017 election that happened. And so finally, Brexit. So the Parliament vote happens on December 20th, 2019. 358 to 234 is the final vote that gets the bill to move out of the EU passed. And so the UK officially withdraws from the EU with the very final, like if you wanted to cut the last cord, happens on January 31st, 2020 is when they were officially out of the EU after 47 years of membership, and then the last 4 years of intense political wrangling and debate. It finally does happen. And so we're now not that far away from January 31st of 2020, so we're just here a little ways away from it. And the Conservatives still have a lot of the wind at their backs, and so what Brexit means to the country will have a lot to do with the actions that Boris Johnson and his party take in coming months and years here. And now the question is, will it be bad? Will it be good? It's hard to say. Will it improve the economy, or will it crash the economy? Or, what's going to come of all this? And no one really knows. This is a pretty radical thing that the UK finally made happen, to break away from the EU after being so entangled in it. And so only time's going to tell. And so I would recommend you check back 2030, 2040, drop in on the BBC and see what is happening as far as the UK is concerned. It's going to be a really interesting road that they travel. I would recommend. I'm going to post an article below. It's called "Why Britain Brexited." It's from the Atlantic in January of 2020, so not during this time period. Actually, it's a day before the UK actually left. It was January 30th of 2020, and it's just a well thought out article that just kind of tries to figure out why the UK chose to walk this path, and so that would be a good one for you to dive into there to understand this whole process a bit more thoroughly. So anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you can appreciate the system there of politics and the recent changes a bit more, and hope you have a great rest of the week. So I'll talk to you soon. All right.